Welcome to Catholic Views. I'm your host, Renee Kranz. In studio with me today, I have the illustrious Father Chuck Cimpl here. Welcome, Father Cimpl.
Thank you. Good to be back here.
Yes, it's been, probably a year, maybe even two since you've been here last.
I don't think it's been two, but it's been a little while
Maybe
since
year
I've
and a
been more laid back now that I'm in a senior status as a priest. So it's a little bit different than the day-to-day stuff that a lot of priests go through.
Right,
so,
yeah. We were just talking before we started the show. Father Cimpl's just doing all the fun stuff. He's subbing for people, doing masses, and
yes.
I guess I'm not sure if funerals are fun, but they're less work than all the administrative stuff of a parish.
That's true,
Yeah.
yes.
So you get to have fun, and you're living downtown.
I'm living in downtown Sioux Falls. I've always kind of wanted to give it a try, and it's been going well. I like it. There's summer was a little bit nicer than now, but now too it's not bad because where I live I don't have to worry about snow removal.
That's true.
Or anything like that. So I just when it snows it's kind of pretty.
Right.
I know it used to be when I was a priest in the active ministry, I used to think, oh no, will the parking lot get cleaned? Who's going to come? Who's going to do this? And will there be enough salt? Will somebody slip? Not have to worry about that anymore.
Right. You can just enjoy it. And,
yes.
And you don't have very far to go to get necessities.
No,
really.
There's a lot of Sioux Falls, downtown Sioux Falls, as probably most people know around here, is really developing. And there's a lot of neat little restaurants. And it's just a lively place, and I think they're continuing to try to make it even better and better each year.
Yeah, it seems to fit your personality, so I'm sure it's a good fit down there.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk today about how you got your call to the priesthood, because I've known you for a while. You were the priest, our pastor at Holy Spirit until you retired recently, and I don't even know what your story. I don't think. Actually, my husband and I were talking about, has Father Cimpl ever talked about that in a homily? And he thought maybe you had.
I probably
a little bit here and there.
Indications about things, but it's it's not one of those.
He says it's not that great, so we'll find out.
Stories. I mean, but it's not like a lot of guys that have had big different conversion experiences in their life, which mine was pretty much. A pretty normal existence. The church talks about domestic churches, means our home lives, and that's where really I think most vocations get their start, and that's really true with mine. My mom and dad were very, very centered in their careers, of course. Dad in the meat business, and my mother even helped work in a little grocery store that we had in the small town of Tabor, right near Yankton, and so. We grew up pretty normally. It's those of you that know anything about Tabor, South Dakota, it's a very Czechoslovakian community.
Is that what your ancestry is too?
Yes.
Okay.
My one grandfather from my dad's side came directly from the Czech Republic, and he left home when he was about 17 and came over with a brother of his, and they never went back because that's just that time in the early part of the 20th century when they came over to the United States. So, we grew up in that town. It was very, very kind of a little myopic as far as there wasn't a lot of diversity. There's only one church still in Tabor, and it's Catholic. And so the people that started the town were Catholic, and a lot of the Czech people that came were Catholic. So it was a small town. We had a grade school, a Catholic grade school that was taught by the Benedictine sisters in Yankton. And so all my teachers throughout all of grade school were sisters from the monastery at Sacred Heart in Yankton. And in fact, some of them, a couple of them even did, which was interesting. My brother is a little bit younger than me. Like, I was the oldest in the family. I have a brother and a sister. And my brother and I, when we were growing up, my sister is quite a bit younger than me and my brother. The sisters did childcare for us, and so my brother and I would be in the house, and they were still in their full Benedictine habits at the time. So if you can imagine a sister taking care of us, we could not misbehave, or we would be really in trouble. So we had sisters that actually did some childcare for us, but. They were very good. I had very good experiences with the Benedictine sisters. And the town, too, because of the Czechoslovakian influence and I think on a kind of an initiative back before I was born, they were looking for a Czechoslovakian priest, a priest that could speak Czech.
Oh.
In the early times, before I was born, when my dad was actually in serving in the church, they had a priest that came out of Omaha that was Czech, Monsignor Boschka.
Oh, wow.
And he then died, and then they attempted to put a priest there that could not speak the Czech language, and that caused kind of a concern because a lot of the people only spoke Czech. So
Wow.
I think it was really through the initiative of the people and some of the people in town, because there was a big Czech influence in Chicago area. They knew of a Czechoslovakian monastery, St. Procopius, out of Lisle, Illinois, still there. And they had priests, and so I think they got a couple of guys from the town that went on a train to interview these people, and they sent 2 Czechoslovakian-speaking priests. They weren't from Czech, but they could speak Czech
Wow.
to the town.
Yeah.
And so we had those priests. There was always, even though small town, they had 2 of them came because they wanted them to live in community.
Sure.
And because they were from that area, and my grandmother was one of the cooks, along with, they also had other people, but my grandmother cooked a lot for them at times, and other people, and then so they couldn't go home for Christmas or Easter until after the celebrations
sure.
were done.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of them at the house a lot. It was kind of a hassle because we, every Christmas, every Easter meal, we had to have like the priest there. And it was like, oh, really?
You had to really behave.
And so it was like, oh, priests are coming again. And so my brother and I would always think, okay, we'll get through it again. But what I found out was that they were really, really happy guys.
Yeah.
I mean, in a good sense. They were really very, very much loved life. And I think that had a big influence on me because they would often sit around and with my dad and mom after dinner, and a lot of times they would watch football games with us and stuff like that. So it was kind of normal just to be around the priests. And they were, like I said, very happy guys. And as I was growing older, especially in high school, there was a kind of a time when I was thinking about what I wanted to do. I really intended, I don't know why, I've always intended that I was going to go to law school.
Oh.
And I just had an interest in law, I guess. And
I always
just
wondered there must have been something before that Father Cimpl was thinking of. Law.
Yeah, I really was. I really thought, well, it was more like I was thinking that because just studying it, I knew if I wanted to get into politics, which I was kind of interested in, I always wanted to be a senator from the state. And it kind of started with a friend of mine, because another part of the story, I ended up going to the Catholic high school in Mitchell at that time, Mitchell Notre Dame High School. And one of my friends that wasn't Catholic, but I got to know pretty well, was Steve McGovern, George McGovern's son.
Sure.
And so George was from Mitchell, of course. And so we would go over to the house a lot, and he was such a historian. And he was, of course, in the Senate. And so I just had that interest.
Yeah.
It kind of really faded a lot when I got selected to go to Boys State. And I got to Boys State.
This is really a test here.
Yeah, I got to Boys State, and then it was up in Aberdeen at Northern, which they still think have it at that place. And we had to get up, and do all these calisthenics, and they, we had to run for various offices in cities, which was not so bad. But I just thought, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. So that was that was my junior year in high school. So my senior year in high school, I was pretty well set that I wanted to go to Creighton University, because a lot of my friends were going to Creighton that I was graduating with, including my cousin, who I was very close to too. We were kind of like brothers, same age, and grew up together. And he was going to Creighton, and he was eventually wanted to go to med school. I was still kind of wavering what to do. And then in the course of it all, a priest that was at the high school, one day, just in kind of casual conversation, just says, "Chuck, you ever thought about being a priest?" And I said, "Nah, not really." I said, it's I don't have anything against them, but it wasn't.
I grew up with them. I don't want to do that. Huh?
Yeah. So it was kind of that way, and after one of those things that I know people say this, that priests should ask more younger guys or guys if they're interested, because it does kind of trigger a thought.
Yeah.
And it did. And I just kept thinking about it and then kind of pursued it, of course, and then went to the seminary right after high school, really. So I never did go to Creighton. I ended up at St. Mary's College, where the Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary, where most of us went at that time. And
Where
I
is
think
that
they're
located?
still in Winona, Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And they're still, I think we have one or two guys
Yeah.
that still go there from the seminary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then went up to St. Paul Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota for my theology. Yeah.
So is there something in particular that you remember that made you decide to go to seminary? I mean, you say that planted a little bit of a seed, but did you struggle with it a bit? Or were you just like, oh, all right, I'll go to seminary?
Well, I had this is really, I know Bishop Hoke's been gone for a long time. I was ordained, I was the last one ordained by Bishop Hoke.
Okay.
After he ordained me, he said, okay, that's enough. and so I was the
on the
last
wrong
one.
path, huh?
I was the last one. This is 1978. And then he retired at the end and Bishop Dudley actually came in December of that year. But
Okay.
at any rate, so when I was a senior in high school, the priest, Father Bream, who actually was the one who told me to think about being a priest, drove me here to Sioux Falls, and I met one-on-one as a senior in high school with Bishop Hoke. And so I was talking to him in his office, and I explained to him, I said, Bishop, I think I should go to Creighton first, and then if I still have an interest in the seminary, I probably will do that. And he said, and then he told me, which I did not know, he went to Creighton, which I did not know. And he said, you know what, I did that. But he said, if I had to do it over again, I think you should try the seminary first. And if it doesn't work out, then you can always transfer your credits and go to Creighton or any place.
Yeah.
So he's the one that said, do it the other way, even though he didn't do it that way.
Yeah.
So, it's a seminary, I think it's still pretty similar. We go through quite a bit of evaluation. I must say, every year there was a board that reviewed us, and then we set up times for it. And every time I'd go into the chapel to pray beforehand and ask the Lord to tell them to tell me not to do this. So that was my prayer. I would say,
That's not what you're supposed to
I said, tell them, because then I wouldn't have to make the decision.
Sure,
So
right.
I would say, my prayer was, tell them to say, Chuck, it's not for you. Go try something else. But that didn't happen. They kept saying, well, you got some things certainly to work on, but we're not going to throw you out of this place. So
God was not going to let you off the hook that easy.
It just kind of progressed. And then even when I was getting ready, college was, you could probably, in my time, and I think kind of true today, you could major in anything. And so it wasn't like you were set yet. But theology, you pretty much had to say, this is going to be your course, and you're going to really take this on. So,
Right.
yeah, so that was probably a big time of just thinking about it more and saying, hey, can you do this? And can you make this commitment? So,
Well, I think probably Bishop Hoke didn't ordain anymore because he's like, well, I can't do better than
I don't
Father
know if
Cimpl,
that's
right?
true. Yeah, I'm sure. So,
Okay, so when you decided to go to the seminary and you actually were ordained a priest, what did your family think? Because did you have any other brothers or sisters? I feel like one of your sisters maybe became a religious sister. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
I'm
only
the
one.
oldest, and nobody really in my immediate, even cousins or relationships, were in the seminary priest. We had only one priest at that time from Tabor, and he actually went to be a Benedictine at St. Procopius. In fact, Father Raymond, who was our pastor, when he died when I was in the 8th grade, and he died in the Tyndall Hospital near Tabor. And I went up to see him, and he was very influential. And that's one thing, I know some people sometimes talk about they've had bad experiences with priests and sisters. Totally unlike my experience.
Right.
I had just wonderful sisters. I mean, just wonderful. They couldn't have been better. And priests. The priests were just fantastic. And so when Father Ray was dying, he talked to me. And I remembered I was only in the 8th grade. And that might have had a little spark, too, because he said, Chuck, if you become a priest, don't become a half a priest. Don't become a diocesan. Become a Benedictine. So that always stuck with me, too. I thought, oh, no. When I get to heaven, if I get there, I'm sure he's there. And then he's going to say, well, you didn't. You became a priest, but you're a diocesan. So, but I actually did go to Procopius and checked it out. And gee, I just couldn't do it. I knew like the community is beautiful. It's a beautiful monastery, but for some reason it just didn't click for me.
Yeah.
I just thought, I think I'm more a South Dakotan, and I just want to be in South Dakota.
Yeah.
This is where I grew up, and I probably had that possibility a bit there, but it wasn't. You were under the direction of an abbot, and it just didn't seem like a right fit. And I was pretty young. I was just like a freshman in high school at that time. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so when you were ordained, is there anything that really stands out from your ordination day? I mean, that's been a little while, but
in a different way. There were 4 of us ordained on my ordination that were classmates of mine, and it was really kind of an interesting time because it was Bishop Hoke's 50th anniversary as a priest.
Okay.
And so actually Cardinal Cody came from Chicago at that time. On the Tuesday before our ordination, Cardinal Cody, they had a big celebration here at the cathedral for Bishop Hoke. And he was quite tired. We were ordained on a Thursday. He was quite tired. And so he didn't want to preach. And so the rector of our seminary in Winona ended up to be the preacher. I think kind of on the last minute, because Bishop Hoke, after this big celebration, he was, elderly already.
Right.
And wanted to retire. And so he kind of just did it, but he didn't preach or anything. So that was kind of unusual.
Yeah.
Event at that time so the rector of the seminary was the preacher.
Yeah.
It's like today, they're beautiful ceremonies, and it was, family was there, of course, and I know a lot of my uncles, my dad's brothers, and my dad's sister were very supportive, but they knew that this was going to be a big event. I suppose they kind of wondered, was this guy really going to be able to make it through this whole thing and do it? Way later, I was having a wedding for one of my brother's daughters in St. Louis, and we were sitting around after the wedding at the reception, and he said he turned to one of his brothers, my uncle, and said, "I'll give Chuck about 5 years in this." So I'm now 44 years into it, so it didn't.
You beat the odds.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left, Father Cimpl. You've been in the diocese a long time. You've been in a lot of large parishes.
Yes.
You've been in Sioux Falls quite a bit, but you've been outside of Sioux Falls a bit too, right?
Well, kind of an odd priesthood there too, which kind of fits my oddity in my whole life. I was only 4 years out of Sioux Falls. I went up to South Dakota State.
Oh, that's right.
So out of 44 years ordained, I've been 40 in Sioux Falls. So really, Sioux Falls is really home to me. Yeah.
So what was the best part of priesthood for you?
Well, I think most of us would probably say the same. You just get to deal with people in some of the most important parts of their life, having a baby and baptizing, and also more crucial times too, when there's sickness or death, and even just the stuff that goes on with depression and anxiety, and I would say for me always was the weekend masses. And I was trained, I think, pretty much in my early priesthood by some really good pastors that really said, "Hey, you make Saturday night, Sunday the most important part of your week. You got to be up for it. You got to be prepared for it. You greet the people. Because 99% of the people you're going to interact with, they're going to be there on Saturday and Sunday. So you just get ready for it. And the weekends were always just really great times of being with the people. And as you're in a parish, and thankfully I've had some times where it was quite long periods of times in parishes, you get to know the people and what they go through. So as you're celebrating Mass with them and looking around, you kind of know, hey, I know that person's going through that, or that person's going through that, or that person's happy, that person's sad. So you're just there with the people in their most important parts of their lives. Yeah,
I will say that my experience of you at Holy Spirit was you were always quite in tune with the people, and you're always upbeat on Sundays when we came in to come to Mass, and just really good really good masses that made you feel like you really cared about us. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think that was the most important. As I said, it was really instilled in me as a young priest when I was first ordained, and I was at Christ the King, and then at St. Michael's. That was the two pastors really emphasized that.
Yeah. So we have about a minute left. If and you probably have had this before, when or if young men come to you and say, "Hey, Father Cimpl, I'm thinking maybe about going to seminary," do you have advice for them?
Sure. Well, it's like for me, I always say, hey, it's something to certainly, and I always tell them it doesn't have to be your final decision right away. If you got an inclination, it's best to give it a try. Just like Bishop Hoke, I usually tell them the Bishop Hoke story with me too. And so I say, if there's an inclination, you'll have time and also advice from others, spiritual directors, formators, that are going to be there with you to help you in this decision. So it's not like you have to have it planned out all now, because it just seems overwhelming to think about that right away.
Yeah.
But, you just kind of let other people help you make that decision, but looking at your gifts and talents and what you could do best for yourself and for God and for the church.
Yeah. Good advice. All right, we're out of time, Father Cimpl. So thank you for coming in and telling us your story. You gave us a low bar, but I think you did really good. I like your story. It's actually a story you don't hear very often, where you're very influenced heavily by priests and sisters in your life. We don't hear that much anymore. So
yeah, I was.
It's good to hear that.
Yep.
All right, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
All right, if you want to find us anytime online, you can go to sfcatholic.org and find Mass times, what's going on in the diocese, and, of course, all Bishop's Bulletin stories and these podcasts. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.